Dr. Longo for our interview today. My name is Jan Kielmann. I'm a functional nutritionist and founder of the Functional Nutrition Forum. You are the director of the Longevity Institute at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles and the Molecular Oncology Foundation. You actually have a whole list of titles that I don't know if we need to do them all, but you're considered the premier authority on longevity nowadays, and you've just published your first book in the US, if I'm right. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your work and your life and your book?
Yeah, so the book is really about the close to 30 years of my involvement in the aging field. And I started when I was very young, 19 years old or so, and I just fascinated by the topic, both scientifically and medically. I always thought, what a great field, to understand why we age, and then obviously it was obviously pretty clear that people were my age back then in 19, nobody had any problems, and people that were 60 or 70.
Yeah.
So even earlier, it's just obvious that this was the way to go, not the way we're doing it right now, which is waiting until somebody's sick and then desperately trying to put a Band-Aid on it. In most cases, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
So then the book, I thought about it for a long time, but a couple of years ago, I thought, well, when we finish a clinical trial and on the fasting mimicking diet, I thought it's just the right moment to write it. And if I wait any longer, it's just too long.
Mm-hmm.
People were asking me all the time, when is the book going to come out? So yeah, it was the right time. I published it first in Italy, in my home country. I did extremely well, and then now in the rest of the world and in the U.S. it just came out.
Okay, great. So it's a book written for the normal people, the layman, right? So everybody can understand it.
It's written for the layman, but it's also full of citations. So in fact, in Italy, one of the groups that appreciated the most were medical doctors, because they could go and pick up the paper and read it, and so almost everywhere where I have a statement, there is a citation, so people can go and check out the paper, and so there's hundreds of citations.
Okay. So what brought you to research the longevity, and basically what brought you to do that?
Not sure. I think I was a musician back in the 80s in Texas. I was studying music, jazz performance, and they asked me to direct a marching band, and I was a rock musician. I said, I'm not going to do that. So they say, well, if you're not going to do that, then you got to find something else. And obviously, aging and biochemistry were always in the back of my mind, even though I never studied them. I was just very excited about changing fields, and that's all I've ever done since then. Biochemistry and aging and longevity. I just thought there was nothing else that even came close to that kind of importance for me. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody else, but for me, certainly.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And your Italian background, the way you grew up, the towns you grew up in, also influenced your thinking in that way, right?
Well, I didn't know it at the time. I mean, some of these, the things that I talk about in the book are just unbelievable coincidences. For example, the place where I was born turns out to be the city where I was born is the city with most over 65 population in Europe.
Wow.
One of the highest in the world.
Yeah.
28.2%, which is incredible. The world will not get to 28% over 65 population until 100 or so. I mean,
yeah, it's amazing.
And then the little town where my parents are from, both of my parents are from, and I grew up every summer turns out to have one of the highest prevalences of centenarians in the world. And so that was also an incredible coincidence. So I mean, in a crazy way, I think I was just meant to study aging.
Meant to be.
And then Los Angeles, where I came to also because of music, had one or two of the world's leading gurus of longevity, both of whom I worked with. First was Roy Walford, and then it was Caleb Finch here at USC. They're both pillars of aging, and so I was lucky enough to work with both.
Amazing coincidences sometimes. So in your research, tell us a little bit about what you found out and what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, in the early days, in 1992, I was in Roy Walford's lab at UCLA doing my PhD. And Roy at the time was actually in biosphere too. He was doing the first human study. He was a real pioneer. The first human study on calorie restriction. So he basically starved everybody chronically for 2 years in a place biosphere too. And I went there when they came out, and I saw a group of very upset people, and they were very thin. They looked emaciated, and I thought, this cannot be the best way to go. I mean, the whole aging field, that was the hottest thing in aging. What happens if you reduce everybody's calories by 30%, and you keep them there for their entire life? And so, yeah, that's where I think I started thinking I need to go back and learn the molecular biology. And then once I really know what regulates aging, then I can go back to humans. And so we started genetics research. I went back to the biochemistry department and started working with starving bacteria, starving yeast. And that was one of the original observations, that if you starve these simple organisms, they live longer, they become stronger. And that was a message to me. And then, of course, I started identifying the genes that control that. The TOR kinase pathway first, and then the RAS PKA pathway. And as we were learning how powerful these genes are, then it also became clear how powerful starvation was. And that's all I've ever done since. I think it was just a matter then of linking components, for example, amino acids to the TOR pathway, to the IGF-1 pathway, sugar to the PKA pathway. And then it's just a matter of time before we learn how to manipulate all of this. And these custom mimicking diets that we've clinically tested now are just the very end, not the very end, but certainly the latest component of this 30 years of work on aging. My mission was never to make discoveries. My mission was like, how do I make people live to 110 healthy? And I didn't care how I had to do it. I mean, it's just a matter of, if I had to go from biochemistry to immunology, neurobiology, endocrinology, I've done it all. In each case, I went in and sought collaboration or learning from people that were very, very good in the field, because I knew that this comprehensive approach was the only way to really get people to just have guidelines to get very healthy.
So whatever it takes to make people age more, and in a healthy way.
Yeah, age less.
Certainly age less and in a healthy way.
Live more.
Right.
That was the idea.
So what you saw in Biosphere 2 was that acute starvation. Is that why it was so impactful on you? And then you tried to counterbalance that with how much can we actually restrict our calories without causing that acute starvation?
Yeah, they were not doing acute starvation. I mean, they were just doing slow, I don't know if you call it starvation, but slow, cruel limitation. Continuing, right? And that's what calorie restriction does. So if you look at what happens, the results are remarkable. So the cholesterol goes incredibly down, glucose levels go down, blood pressure, everything looks incredibly good, but too much, right? glucose gets like 60,
Mm.
if not lower in some people. And blood pressure is 85, right? It's systolic blood pressure. But they look like skeletons. And I think that clearly they were not going to get cardiovascular disease or diabetes, no way, but they would probably get other problems. And in fact, Walford died of a motor neuron disease. Now, nobody knows what caused it, but people suspect that it may have been this chronic, being pushed chronically all the time into this extreme state that, together with his age, he was in his late 60s. That could have, done the damage. And so I started thinking, how do I get this incredible benefit? I mean, if you look at the monkey study, you have diabetes completely prevented versus 60%, I think, in the control group. All diabetes. And cancer and cardiovascular disease are reduced by 50%. This is ridiculous result. And yet the monkeys don't live that much longer. And you're thinking, how can I wipe out diabetes and cut cancer and cardiovascular disease in half and not affect longevity? So that means there is as much damage done by the calorie restriction as there is in solutions. And so the fasting mimicking diet basically is all these years of molecular work to say, of course, there's a way to get both, right? There's a way to get the benefits of calorie restriction without the problems of calorie restriction. And I think, we're close to it, if not there.
Yeah, that's great. So a lot of people know or have heard that fasting is beneficial for them, but I guess for the average person, it's just not realistic to do a water fast for. Some people want to do it for 2 weeks. When I hear that, I'm getting scared.
Well, I mean, there are clinics that specialize in long-term fasting, and it can be done in clinics like that. But of course, at home, doing a water-only fasting of any length, even a couple of days, it can be dangerous. And it's tough on people, and it causes changes that are so dramatic, particularly in people that are not used to it. If somebody grew up doing fasting because of mother and father did it, probably it's going to be okay. They're used to it. But most people are not like that. Maybe 99% of people are not in that category. And so you're going to have problems, even a couple of days of water on fasting. And also not having supervision, not having people explaining to you what you should do, how you should do it, who should not do it. For example, if you're a diabetic person, injecting yourself with insulin, you could die doing that. Few people know this, but that's a fact, right? And of course, you're anorexic and et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of things to watch out for. And then if you watch out for all the things and you do it carefully and you do it with the fasting diet, then you just eliminate the problem, and you have all the good that comes from it.
Yeah, so you basically, with the fasting mimicking diet, you basically get your micronutrients and a small amount of calories and your liquids.
Not a small amount of calories. Day one's got 1,100 calories. So it's a good amount of calories if you compare to zero. Right? So it's close to 50% of the normal calories on day one, and then it goes down to about 750 calories in day 3 to 5. But I would say, these are most doctors who feel pretty comfortable that for a few days, this is a caloric intake that the great majority of people have no problem undergoing, particularly because it is so nourishing. There's so much in that diet that prevents malnutrition.
Yeah, I have to say I did it at A4M at the conference, and I actually did 1 day on myself before the FMD, so it was 6 days, and I was doing pretty well on it. I was kind of getting impatient because it was 6 days, and I'm a skinny person. Yeah, it worked well. So basically, let's say people are interested to doing the fasting mimicking diet and they do it for 5 days. What do you recommend when they come out of it, when they go back transitioning to their normal diet, maybe for the transition period and then later on for the normal standard diet?
Yeah, well, the prolonged it has a manual that comes with it, about the transition diet. And the transition diet is a diet that is relatively poor in proteins. You cannot eat a steak afterwards. You keep it light for about 24 hours, and then you can go back to your normal diet. So, like rice and bread and pasta, vegetables, and, I mean, just not eating very much, but all these things are fine. Keeping the sugars low, and keeping the meats and heavy foods. Of course, saturated fats and all that. It's probably not such a good idea in the 24 hours following the end of the FMU.
So in the longevity diet, in the book, what is your standard kind of, or your preferred diet that you found through your research and through the tradition that you would recommend for people?
Yeah, so in the first half of the book is about the everyday diet. And I talk about, first of all, I talk about 5 pillars, the 5 pillars that were used to come up with that. And that is in response to the chaos that is being created by almost anybody that writes to say, give recommendations, dietary recommendation. And most of them, have very little understanding of, almost no one out there is understanding of the consequences on lifespan, right? I mean, very few that are writing books on diet have an understanding of longevity effects of the diet. And that's already a bad start, right? So in the book, I talk about 5 pillars, and one of them is basic research on longevity. The other one is epidemiology, clinical research, and study of centenarians. It's very important when you give a recommendation. For example, right now we hear people talking about ketogenic diet, right? And most people don't know what it means, but people talk about it. And if you go around the world and let's say a ketogenic high protein diet, it's unheard of in any long-lived population that I know. You will have, let's say, 30% proteins and 60% fat and 10% carbohydrate. You don't see it. You see almost unanimously a high carbohydrate, low sugar, high carbohydrate, low protein diet. Almost every single one of these populations. And fats, some of the cases are good fats are high, like Greece and Sardinia. In some cases, the good fats are low, like Okinawa. They don't eat that much fat at all. So fat doesn't really seem to be a big factor one way or another. Maybe some way protective, but somewhat protective, but probably not highly. No, I recommend 60, 30, 10, 50% carbohydrates, mostly and vegetables, and some fish, a pescatarian diet, and then 30% fat, good fat, nuts, almonds, olive oil, salmon, etc., and then 10% protein. That's my recommendation, and also again very, very common among long-lived population. To make it as little restrictive as possible. The 60, 30, 10. I think most people can live with it and actually be very happy about the food that they eat.
Okay. Based on your research and your experience, is that basically what led you to the recommendation of mostly fish? And is there a recommendation of no meat, or is there a recommendation of maybe small amounts of healthy meat that are, grass-fed with healthy beneficial fatty acids, or is there no meat recommendation?
I always say it depends what you want to achieve, right? So if somebody's saying, I want what you think is the best diet, the safest one, and then I say no meat, besides fish, a couple of times a week, low mercury, that's the way to go. Why? Again, over and over and over, whether it's Okinawa, Loma Linda, Costa Rica, Sardinia, Calabria, Greece, they all have variations of it, but usually it's very close to that. Now, when the people get older, I start, after 65, we have publications suggesting that there are clearly different stages of life. So after 65, the cheeses, yogurt, eggs, they start probably becoming more and more important. So it's probably good to start introducing them, and maybe even some white meat or grass-fed meat, etc. Might not be such a bad idea for somebody 70, 75, 80, 85. Why? Well, because the nourishment becomes more important than and also because some of these factors like IGF-1, 4, etc., they're already so downregulated that by having an extreme diet, they may become too low, and that may cause frailty, right? So now that's so you're protected on one side, and then you're frail on another, and you're back to like a neutral state, and that's not what we want. We want to sort of optimize the strength and the strength of the immune system, for example, but also the muscular strength, and at the same time minimize the disease risk.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable recommendation, and it's probably the same for people that have carnitine deficiencies through genetic problems. They could probably do a little more animal protein as well, right?
Yeah, that this is why I always recommend if somebody has any deficiency, any genetic problem, they really need to get the doctors involved.
Right.
And the doctor, if they can't figure it out, they can contact us.
Okay.
We can work with them. We've always done it. The doctor says, here's a problem. I don't know how to deal with it. Then usually, and so it's case by case. I don't want to give general statements.
Yeah.
That genetic mutation, what should they do? Well, it depends on the genetic mutation, depends on severity. In some cases, they shouldn't do fasting at all. They shouldn't do diets that are extreme at all. In some cases, the genetic mutation may be so dominant that you need to have a special diet just to keep them alive.
Yeah, I agree. Have you found anything, so in these standard kind of diets, the fad diets, how we call them, that always went around for decades, there's some research on it triggering kind of starvation reflex, so that people do dieting and then bounce back and gain their weight back or gain even more weight after that. Have you found anything in relation to that over the years?
Yeah, I think those studies refer to this prolonged diet. If you go, let's say, months on a very low-calorie diet, then and especially if you exercise at the same time, your system slows down metabolism because it's probably trying to prevent hyperglycemia and other problems. What we do, we really see the opposite. So we see that, for example, in mice, if we give them the fasting mimicking diet twice a month, they overeat everything, they undereat during the fasting mimicking diet, and yet they lose weight. And in people, we have evidence in the same direction, meaning that they lose weight, and particularly they lose abdominal fat. So yeah, I think the way we're doing it is promoting the opposite, is promoting long-term metabolic changes that are consistent with a higher burning rate and a lower burning rate.
Okay, great. So basically, it's almost normal calorie intake at the normal times, and then between 2 to 4 times a year, the fasting mimicking diet, depending on the needs of the person. Is that what you would roughly say?
12 times a year.
2 to 12 times.
Let's say obese, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, they probably need to do it once a month.
Once a month.
Until they move to a different level, and then they can go. I mean, I would say an average once every 4 months. People could do it once every 4 months.
Okay. So you mentioned diets low in sugar but higher in carbohydrates. Do you mean complex carbohydrates or do you mean refined carbohydrates? Or?
No, I don't mean complex carbohydrates. And complex carbohydrates include pasta and bread and rice, etc. um, I mean like legumes and vegetables. They should be, those should be the main source of carbohydrates.
Okay.
But the starches are okay. And why are they okay? And they should not be demonized because in my book I show, and I took this from centenarians dishes that the 50 grams of pasta, let's say, with, and it could be rice. It doesn't have to be pasta. It could be a Chinese dish with 50 grams of rice and 300 grams of vegetables, right? So one of the best dishes, I think, is 50 grams of pasta, 300 grams of chickpeas, garbanzo beans, and then another 100 grams of vegetables. It's like one of the best tasting dishes. I eat this like 5 times a week. And but base tasting dishes and a lot of olive oil on top of it that you can have, and at the same time, high nourishment and very healthy for you. And another thing that people understand, people that when they talk about what I do, they always say, "Oh, Longo, restriction, eat less." Even journalists make this mistake all the time. And I say, I never say. My boss used to say, "Eat less." I never say that. I say, "Eat more." People are really surprised. Say, "Well, eat less calories, a little bit less calories, but eat more," because the dish that I just described is big. It's much bigger than let's say a cheese and high starch dish that might have small volume but lots of fat and calories.
Yeah.
This is a really important point. Eat more of the right kind of food. Also because it's got a mechanical role in making your stomach full and sending the signal to the brain that nourishment-wise I have everything I need, and volume-wise I'm full, and that it's a good way to, in a simple manner, to help people also control weight.
And you haven't found, so the plant protein, you haven't found them to spike the levels as much as the animal protein, right? Is that correct? Because chickpeas have quite a good amount of protein, right?
Chickpeas have, about 10% protein.
10%, yeah.
So if this is why I was saying 300 grams, you got to get to that level to have, say, 30, 35 grams of protein, which you need to maintain a normal muscle mass. Yeah, so chickpeas is a good way to go. But most of the legumes are fine. And a couple times a week, fish. It's easier to get more protein from fish, and but also because of other omega-3, B12, etc. So the fish can also take care of some of the malnourishment that will be common for people that make changes, dramatic changes to their diet.
Sounds good. What do you think about the consumption of fruit? Is that okay in small amounts?
It's fine in small amounts. I don't like this idea of fruits and vegetables because it's basically allowing some people to maybe already have a high sugar diet, and then on top of that they might have tons of fruit, and now their fructose and glucose level for the day go to very high
peaks levels, yeah.
And that's and sugar is sugar, and it's gonna contribute to problems. Of course, somebody had a perfect diet, maybe not so bad to have a lot, 5 apples a day. But considering that most people are gonna use added sugar, sweets, etc., then having 5 apples a day, even though an apple is a very good thing, having 1 or 2 is perfect. Having 5, plus the rest of it, it starts becoming a problem.
Right.
And this is why I don't like these fruits and vegetables. Better talk about vegetables and some fruit.
But on the fasting mimicking diet directly, then you don't recommend anything else but the FMD, right? Because it's very tightly calculated in the calorie range and everything.
The FMD, I made the mistake of telling, when I published my book in Italy, I made the mistake of saying, because I felt that. People are going to say, oh, look, there's a product now, and they're trying to sell products. First of all, I don't make a penny out of that, any of it, and everything is donated to a foundation. But even then, I felt bad. And then I started hearing from doctors, patients, lawyers, and they said, don't do this. I know you feel bad and you think you're going to do a favor to people, but just say, go home and make your own fasting mimicking diet. But the consequences are disastrous. And disaster does not have to include 95% of the people. Disaster can be in 3%. Or eventually somebody could do 10 improvised fasting diets and be fine, and on the 11th get into trouble. And this is why it should only be done with the kids that it was clinically tested. It's fairly inexpensive if you do it 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, people also have to keep in mind that buying foods and drinks and coffee for 5 days is expensive. The average American, middle-class American, spends, I think, $170, $180 a week. So there is almost, for them, there will be almost no difference. The cost of the FMD and the cost of eating and drinking for 5 days. So I think it's also a lot of the money goes back to research. So I think it's the way to do it.
Okay. So, I'm really interested in the research that you found out about the senescent cells and the stem cell activation. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those details?
Sorry.
That's fine.
I gotta unplug this. Okay.
So your research about the senescent cells and the stem cells, I guess a lot of our listeners would be really interested in that. Can you tell us a little bit more about those details?
Yeah, senescent cells, we're still doing that research. We haven't got to the end of it yet. So, but stem cells, we published a number of papers and now are looking into what the effects of the fasting mimicking diet on stem cells is. And most of it is in mice, but also the human data is consistent with what we found in mice. And so we've shown regeneration in the pancreas, regeneration in the blood system, regeneration in the liver, and probably muscle, et cetera, et cetera. So in the brain, in the nervous system. And I think that probably, I always say when you cut yourself, what happens is really remarkable, right? I mean, everything, you don't know what's happening, but everything goes to work. And next thing you know, a couple of weeks later, it's gone, right? And so I'm starting to think that the fasting represented really this in body repair system that understands and can really detect a lot of the damage, maybe not all the damage, but a lot of the damage. Meaning that, we applied it to multiple sclerosis, we applied it to type 1 diabetes, to type 2 diabetes, to cancer. So in all cases, there's something dysfunctional. And let's say a cancer cell and a normal cell. Well, the starvation makes it very difficult for the cancer cell, but the normal cells in a coordinated way know exactly what to do. And in the autoimmunity, the starvation now makes it very difficult for the autoimmune cell. Why? We don't know, but maybe because the autoimmune cell, not like the cancer cell, is a rebel cell. Starting to lose its sophistication, its ability to respond well to all the problems. And at the same time, now you eliminate the autoimmune cell, you give the signal to the hematopoietic system and the immune system to function better, and then you give the signal to the oligodendrocytes to start regenerating the myelin that has been damaged. So, I mean, it's so complex and sophisticated that you have to think this is an evolved process. It's not something that's happening by mistake. It detects the damage, and now it's almost like taking the car to the shop, right? Well, okay, now until you take it to the shop, you keep having problems, and then you take it to the shop, and it just sits there, and they fix it, and then a few days later it's ready to go. So probably that is the power of fasting. if done correctly. And again, it's so powerful that it can work in your favor or against you, depending how you use it or misuse it.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, a lot of people, for example, that do exercise, they think they have to eat a lot of protein to build their muscle. And I saw some remarks about that in your book, that you think it's almost the opposite, that it may be actually better for muscle production not to eat a lot of protein. Can you?
Yeah. So well, first of all, again, the book is not really much about opinion, although of course I have the opinions, but I try to always back it up. Now with one paper, with a series of papers,
Right.
built, and so for muscle, uh, for example, the human data by others is suggesting that 30 grams of protein are all you need in one session to maximize, not build muscle, but maximize muscle building together with strength exercise. So, the argument could be you need to do it twice a day, so that would be 60 grams of protein. That's it. Even if you're a bodybuilder, right? That's probably all you need is 60 grams of protein instead of 200 grams or maybe many bodybuilders will have, or 150. Um, and then on the other side, you have the in-between. And what we've shown is that TOR signaling, which is controlled by protein, and also PKA, which is partially controlled by protein, is blocking stem cell activation and regeneration, right? So, we haven't specifically looked at muscle rebuilding, but the possibility is that by having a lot of protein, you're blocking the ability of satellite cells, muscle cells, stem cells to be ready to rebuild. And this is why I talked in the book. A long time ago, I was actually in the U.S. Army, and and I was big, and you think that well, you're big, you have a lot of muscle, so you must be very strong. And then I point out, showing off a little bit, saying, well, now I do as many push-ups as I used to do back then. I was half the possible. So that means that it's a lot of muscle, not necessarily a lot of strength. Maybe because you have cells that are staying around and they're getting older, they're dysfunctional, and you're keeping them there, you're building them, making them more and more and more, but they're not really giving you strength with volume. And these are, we're doing a clinical trial at the University of Verona right now, testing exactly this, right? So what happens after 3 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet? What happens to muscle mass, muscle strength? And, we'll have an answer pretty soon. We have a sophisticated set of tests, and we'll see. But, the suspicion is that, less protein, right amount of protein when you exercise, when you train, and then low protein but sufficient protein the rest of the time. That's probably going to maximize muscle strength.
Sounds good. I used to work out in nature for 10 years, and I always saw the deer as my example. They don't look very muscular, but they run up the hills in a speed that is impossible for any of us to reach. So they're very strong.
A low protein diet?
Yeah, pretty much. So you mentioned ketogenic diet before. I've heard from some practitioners that they've done experiments on themselves, and one of them said they tried without any carbohydrates, and it was not going well at all. So they found out by experimenting on themselves they needed at least a small amount of carbohydrates. Others said it basically destroyed their microbiome. So is yours more like kind of in the FMD? Is that more like a keto adaptive diet a little bit? Could you compare that, or is it really completely different?
Well, the FMD, the idea of the FMD is to make the body go fully into a starvation response mode, right? And try to interfere as little as possible with the natural process. It's very different from ketogenic. It can be a normal calorie diet, which is basically forcing the body to use what is given to the body, lots of fat. So very, very different. In our case, in the book I talk about something I call it in tune with evolution. What does that mean? It means that if you're doing something, you have to look back in the history of all organisms, not just humans, going all the way to bacteria, but particularly humans, and say, is this something that would be consistent with what evolution has seen in all those billions of years, right? And if the answer is like, no, I don't think this has ever been seen before, now you're putting the patient in danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's just you're introducing something that they've never seen before. And if they've never seen before, if the body's never seen that before, it may not know, may react very well from month to month, 6 months, maybe even 6 years. Or maybe after 10 years, you start seeing the problems, right? For example, in our epidemiological study, we called high protein diet. It took 18 years to see a 3 to 4-fold increased risk of cancer in people that had very high levels of protein intake.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the mistakes is to look at acute effects and think because something makes you lose weight or anything, it could even be lowers your cholesterol. It doesn't matter. You really have to think about what could be the consequences of revolutionizing somebody's diet in a way that the body and making the diet so that it's so distant from what the human body is historically ever been exposed to. So that puts the patient in danger. And the particular concern is that if you have an alternative that instead is to use, let's say, a high protein, high animal fat diet, right? Say you lose weight. Well, but you also lose weight with a high, complex carbohydrate, a high vegetable, a high legume diet that is relatively, normal calories, and especially if you do it with time restricted feeding. So why then you want to risk, a diet that is imposing dangers to you when you have one that is commonly used that it can give you the same effect? Of course, people sometimes choose because they like it more. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Do without it, and that is their choice. But let's make sure that we have the facts straight on what the potential for your health is. Like cigarettes. Smoking kills you, and if you want to still smoke, that you could do that. But at least now you know that it kills you.
Yeah. I agree. So the other question I had is there anything you want to say more about these biochemical pathways that you found? Is there anything that you haven't mentioned yet that you think is important for our listeners to hear?
The biochemical process in yeast, we worked out pretty well in mammals. We have a decent understanding. We gotta get a lot more done, but they're very sophisticated networks of genes. I talked about the early genes, the ones that the signal transduction genes, and then they regulate what's called transcription factors, and these stress-resistant transcription factors. They're the ones that regulate, turn many enzymes, proteins that control protection and regeneration.
So it seems to you like an evolved process, like you said, or a kind of a program, right? That the body activates once it encounters the starvation response, basically.
Yeah, clearly a starvation response mode, and probably its job is as you're sitting there, starting with bacteria and yeast, um, you're sitting there under the sun and you're starving, and the temperature goes from very cold to very hot, somewhere in Northern California, and maybe you have other organisms that are releasing toxins against you, and you have to survive. And this is why these organisms during starvation conditions probably have developed these shields to protect them against most things that are, they're going to be exposed to. But these things include intracellular, so the inside problems that are contributing to aging. So now you're protected against the inside problems and the toxins that come from outside, and that's probably why these starvation responses are so protective.
Interesting. You saying intracellular, it just gave me an idea. There's some people that suspect intracellular infections. Have you seen anything about that in your research, if it helps with those, or is that something you didn't study?
No, we did not study infection.
Mm.
I mean, we're now studying the effect on the immune system against infectious agents, and yeah, so we're trying to figure out, does it increase the, for example, cyclophosphamide, does it increase the ability to fight viral infections?
Hmm. So that's future research that will probably take a few years until we hear something about that, right?
I think so.
Hmm. So I don't have that many more questions. I had one that's kind of personal. You were into music and probably a very creative person. Do you think that helped you a lot in your research and being a creative person where the brain comes up with creative ideas all the time?
Yes, I mean, there's no doubt, and I think that I talk about that in the book, and I also started a foundation called Create Cures, and the idea of the foundation is, to stimulate creativity in science and medicine, and basically, unfortunately, worldwide in Europe and the United States, but also in Asia, the most creative, sort of the crazy ideas are the ones that are going to get shut down.
Mm.
I mean, it's much easier to get funded if you have a little bit of a variation of something that everybody figures is the status, right? When I first started working with aging in yeast, people were laughing at the yeast. They were laughing at the new model that I came up with. They were laughing when we came up with the genes that controlled aging. It's just amazing how if it's too new, as Machiavelli used to say, they're gonna just laugh at you. And
Mm.
and instead, of course, I mean, probably a lot of new things are laughable. Um, but I think we should encourage it, and particularly when we talk about major diseases, incurable diseases. I mean, this is why we're going so slow against cancer, probably because so many people are all working on the same thing, and the people that have crazy ideas, they don't have a fund to carry out the research, and then it just takes 10 times longer for them to eventually grab have enough money to study or test their hypothesis. So yeah, absolutely, creativity in science and medicine is key, and I hope. I think it'll be great if we ever have a National Institute of Health in the U.S. and elsewhere in Europe that has a component that is just for creative ideas. To be like some money put aside, I think, just for the real creative ideas that are screened for that feature.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I hope the right people will hear this. um, yeah, so is there anything else that you want to say that you think should still be said about your book? Or
No, I mean, buy the book. I always buy 10 copies. I don't make a penny out of it, unfortunately. No, I give everything to the foundation. And, in Italy, we raise a lot of funds with the sales of the book. And I hope the same happens in the U.S. And it just goes back to the people that, they want to see. I mean, I have people maybe get a 3 or 4 emails every day from people with multiple sclerosis, cancer, Alzheimer, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all saying, and often I get email with diseases that we never, like today, glaucoma. Somebody asked me about glaucoma. Did you try that? Or, you asked me about certain things that we didn't do. I think, when if we get funds from the book sales, these are the things that the people are asking is what we're going to go after with these funds. And so we have an opportunity to test it.
great. So both the proceeds from Prolon and from the longevity diet will all go to the foundation?
Uh, Prolong everything that goes to me instead of me goes to the foundation.
Okay, okay.
So I don't make a penny out of it, and then the book, same thing. Everything that goes to me, that should have gone to me, goes to the foundation. Right? So yeah, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't control.
Mm.
For the editor, I've tried, but it doesn't work. What the publishers and the companies do, but Even with the company, I fight very hard to make sure that the products are kept at a price that everybody can afford it.
Great, perfect. So this was very interesting. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope we'll get a chance to talk again one day.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks.